I'm very uncoordinated. This is gonna be fun. I dropped my camera pretty badly the other day and now it's freaking out. Really don't know how this is gonna work. My camera is literally possessed. I'm gonna do my first wrap-up. I haven't done a monthly wrap-up like this before. Alrighty, so getting right into the books. The first book that I read of 2019 was The Song of Susannah, the Dark Tower series, book 6 by Stephen King. This one is kind of widely renowned as the most filler book of the series. It's not bad by any means, but it definitely feels like the only reason it exists is because the 5th book and the 7th book were both already way too long to include this part of the book, and so it got its own little section. Very little happens in the book that sets it aside as its own book. Basically what I'm saying is it's nothing really all that special, but it is necessary to the story to move it along. It's like one of the shorter ones toward the end of the series. It's like you get these big, thick, here, I'll show you. Just to give you a visual, so this is the 5th book. See how thick that is, where my puppy destroyed it when she was having a temper tantrum. You get Song of Susannah, which is way smaller in comparison to the 5th book. And then you have the 7th book, which is again a lot more hefty than the 6th book. I can't really summarize it without giving away the rest of the series, so I'm not going to. I'm just gonna leave the Goodreads synopsis down in the description below. The best way that I can describe this book, and I know this is not gonna make sense to anybody who hasn't read this series, but I would almost describe it as to dash. Like, for anybody who is reading / has read the series, like, this book is to dash. It's like this in-between space of this series. It's like is and it isn't the story that we leave behind in book 5, and then it isn't the story that we pick up on in books 7. So to dash is like really the best way I could describe this. Moving on, the next book that I read was The Roses of May, the Collector Series number 2 by Hutchison. This one I read on Kindle. I've been reading this whole series on Kindle because originally I had Kindle Unlimited and Butterfly Garden was included in Kindle Unlimited. I no longer have Kindle Unlimited, so I've been buying the rest of them on Kindle. I really want physical copies of these books because they're just really, really pretty. As I said in my last video, the Collector Series is very quickly becoming one of my favorite series so far. One of the criticisms that I've seen about this series, and specifically the 2nd book, is that everybody thought that the 2nd book was going to be like a continuation of the 1st book. Everybody thought we were going to watch the progression of the trial and how that affected the girls post their very traumatic experience, but really what the book is, it's kind of like it's in the same universe, and it's chronological. It takes place after the 1st book, but it concerns a completely different serial killer and a different form of collecting. We see the same detectives and some of the same main characters from the last book come into play in the 2nd book as secondary characters to this whole new setup, this whole new family, and this whole new lore behind this new serial killer that the detective is now investigating. And I have a feeling from reading the synopsis of the 3rd book that that's just how the series is going to be. Every book is going to be focused on a different serial killer in the same universe, seemingly chronologically. But honestly, I'm really enjoying it that way. Like, I really kind of think it keeps it fresh every book while also bringing the parts that you liked about the past books into what's happening now. And then who knows, like Hutchison has this really great opportunity at the very end of this series. I don't know how many books there's going to be in this series. Right now there's 3 and there is a 4th going to be released this year, which I'm very excited about. She has this great opportunity to, in some way, shape, or form, all of these serial killers kind of have some sort of connection, or maybe they meet in prison or something like that. I think this could have a really, really cool diabolical ending. These books are so hard to read because they do involve rape, molestation, sexual abuse. It involves everything around the topic of trauma. It has anxiety and depression, and it has PTSD and grieving. There is gore. It can be really hard to get through these books. Personally, I'm eating them up. I don't know why these ones are not bothering me. The way Hutchison writes about it and the way she respects what she's writing about really, really helps ease my anxieties about reading about that specific topic. I don't know how to describe it any other way other than Hutchison is just a really good writer in that respect. Kudos to Hutchison for that, but do be warned if you do read this series, it has a lot of trigger worthy content. I am setting out to be better at pronouncing last names. I feel like I can put forth the effort to actually look it up and do my very best to get the right pronunciation. I probably won't get the right one every single time. With that in mind, the next book that I read was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste is how I have found on the internet how to pronounce that. I'm so sorry if I didn't pronounce it correctly, but I did try to put in some effort to pronouncing it correctly. I did the audiobook of this one because I had a friend who lent me their copy of this book at one point, and I sat down to read it, and for some reason I just could not get into it again. So at the risk of spending money on a book that I would not get into, I decided to use a credit from my Audible account to get this book and listen to it. But I just remember it being basically shoved down my throat by every medium possible for books, on Goodreads and on Instagram and on YouTube. Just everybody was all about this book, and everybody's you need to read it. One of my good friends that I used to work with, she was you need to read this, and she doesn't read a whole lot of fiction, so I was wow, I must really need to know about this book, and I felt really bad that I couldn't get into it while reading it. The narrator for the audiobook version that I downloaded was Jennifer Lim, and she does a really great job. I really appreciate her voice. It has a lot of character in it. It has a lot of acting. It feels less like she is reading a book to me, and it's more like she's telling me a story, which is how I feel it should feel. I didn't necessarily enjoy the book. I don't know how to describe this. It was really good. I didn't really enjoy it. I guess that's all I can really say about it. I really appreciated the topic that it tackles, or the many topics that it tackles, and I really love character building, and the story is unique. It's not one that I haven't read a story like this before that tackles this kind of idea of family. What is family? How does one define it and make one and find one? And what do you do if you don't feel you fit into the family that you belong to? Do you really belong to your family? There's all of these deeper meaning topics in there, and I think it's probably it would be a really, really amazing book club read. But I don't know, I didn't necessarily get emotion out of it. I didn't enjoy it that way. I didn't internalize it or feel the book or the emotion behind the book. But apparently this is just not my type of book. I don't know. I still gave it 4 stars, even though I didn't really enjoy it that much, because I can respect that it was a really well written and very tactfully written book with really great characters and A+ writing. The writing I really appreciated. Hi, Shepherd. Do you guys see this? Okay, well, my dog is just gonna be up here in the corner, which is not where you expect to see a dog, but she's a special one. So I got to 2 books of the Wayward Children series. I listened to Every Heart a Doorway and Down and Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire. Pretty sure I said that right because I looked it up. And if I didn't say it right, oh my god, I'm so sorry. So the first book, Every Heart a Doorway, I was not a big fan of. I generously gave it 3 stars. I really wanted to give it 2. I had to be fair to the fact that it is the first book in a series, and oftentimes the first book in any series is kind of universe setup, so it's not usually made necessarily to be the most enjoyable book. However, I think a very well-written first book in a series can also be enjoyable, as well as set up the whole universe. I don't think that Every Heart a Doorway did that very well. I feel it was 100% universe setup with very little character building and very little involvement. It kind of just starts off where it's okay, so here's the universe, this is how it works, and here's all the people that are involved in this universe, and this is how they all meet. And then there's a mystery killer, and I don't really feel this is a spoiler because it starts happening very soon into the book. The books are all super short, by the way. I feel I should mention that. That's the other thing, is I feel this book could have really done with being quite a bit longer if they were going to add this mystery killer into the story. But essentially, as soon as the killer starts killing off some characters, first of all, I'm wondering, A, why did you introduce me to this character in depth if I'm not going to know them for very long? Because I didn't know what the rest of the books were about. Second of all, because this is the first time I'm meeting most of these characters, and because she does not make most of these characters likable in the least. I didn't like anybody that we met in this book. I just didn't care that they were being killed off. And if I don't care that they're being killed off, the interest in the book kind of goes downhill. So I also didn't want to discount the book completely because of the writing, because the narrator for the audiobook version that I got, Cynthia Hopkins, was awful. She does that thing some audiobook narrators do that I hate. It's my biggest pet peeve about audiobooks. It's why I don't like listening to audiobooks, where they end every single sentence at the same exact note, and everything is right here at this level, And sometimes we'd go up here, but then it ends right again, right at the same note. And it's not like a full sentence. It's not telling a story. If you're telling me a story, there's going to be inflections, there's going to be interjections, there's going to be like excitement, and there's going to be levels. There's going to be levels to the reading. And a sentence needs to end. A sentence needs to end where a sentence is supposed to end. So if it's a question, you end it up here. And if it's a statement, and I'm very passionate about it, it ends down here, because that is just what speech is. So I really, really hate audiobook narrators who end every single sentence at the same level. And it's because it's not storytelling. That's not storytelling, that's reading. You're reading to me, and I don't want to be read to, I want you to tell me the story. So I really didn't like the narrator, so I also gave it an extra star because I was like, maybe I don't like this book as much because I really hated listening to the narrator. It was too simple, it was too much universe setup, not enough character building, not enough backstory, and it really should have been longer. The writing itself is actually really good. Like, I actually really do enjoy the writing aspect of it, like the way she chooses to phrase things. And the other kudos I need to give to this book is the diversity. There's an asexual character, a bisexual character, a lesbian, a transgender character. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and I really appreciate the diversity in that sense. So kudos to that. Also helped to get a 3rd star. I did read reviews for the 2nd book because I wasn't sure if I should continue on with the series. As far as what I read, people were saying that the 2nd book provides kind of the missing pieces of the 1st book. The deciding factor for me was that Susannah McGuire actually narrates the 2nd book. And I think she narrates the rest of the series as well. And her narration is like, she's really good at reading. Maybe it's just her own books, but just in general, like, she's a great storyteller. Love her voice inflection, love the voices she used for them, and of course they're her characters, so she knows how she imagined them to sound. This one dives deep into just 2 of the characters who are siblings. It goes into depth about their background, how they ended up in the world that they ended up, and how they handled themselves once they were there, the conflict between the 2 of them, why there's so much conflict between them in the 1st book and everything. So I really personally feel like if this is how the books are going to be, if every single book is going to be focused on a specific character in their specific realm/world and how they came to be at the school for wayward children in the 1st book, that we should have done this backwards. Like, I really would have liked to read basically fairy tales of each of these individual characters and then see them all come together at the school at the end, because then I would actually genuinely care by that point. I would have favorites and I would have ships and things like that, about who dies and who survives and who's contributing to the story and who ends up with who, because I will have invested a lot more into the characters at that point. And the characters are enjoyable once you get to know them, but I didn't feel like I got to know them in the 1st book. The 2nd book I gave 4 stars because it was a way more enjoyable. Like, the story is unique to what the traditional fairy tale of these characters is, which is basically Jack and Jill. It's dark and haunting, which I like. It's very emotional. There's a little bit of romance, but not like, it's not the heavy focus. Susannah McGuire's writing to me is just really good. Like, I really appreciate her writing style. She uses really great vocabulary. She has really good instincts as a writer. The last book that I read in the month of January is Peach by Wane Barton. I was given a PDF copy of Peach to read and review, as it is a newer novel. They're definitely trying to get word out, and I'm so glad they reached out to me. They could not have picked a better person because this book is right up my alley. It's got incredibly rich character development. Like, the stories behind each character are so beautiful, but also emotional and vivid. The only way I can describe it is that the emotions in this book are very vivid. Just a really quick summary of what the book is about. Basically, we follow this guy named Freddie, who is a songwriter who works with all of these famous artists, especially in the UK, to write music, and writes under a pseudonym, experiences a great loss in his life. While he's experiencing his grief and while he's trying to figure out how to properly express that, he's reached out to by a famous American rock star who was famous back in his heyday, and he reaches out to Freddie to be like, hey, I would like to see about potentially writing an album with you, like, what do you think? And so, using this opportunity as an excuse to kind of get out of his grief and get out of this horrible space in his life in the UK, he goes and stays with this gentleman in Idaho to supposedly write this album, but he discovers so much more. He meets some people that will very soon become very important to him in ways he could never imagine. That's what the book is about. It's kind of about identity and the whole idea of what you feel like you should be or what you think you should be feeling versus what you are. It tackles the topics of grief, and it's kind of a coming of age story, family, and then ultimately I think the whole theme is centered around this idea of home, and that home isn't necessarily a place or a person, but a feeling, and sometimes that feeling lies with a specific place or person. Since we are reading this story through the first person perspective of the main character, Freddie, he describes himself often, or his situations often, as very introspective. The whole narrative of the story is extremely introspective. It's very philosophical. It'll definitely get you thinking. It definitely has amazing, amazing quotes. It's very beautifully written. I would almost call it poetic, which is honestly really appropriate because essentially everyone in this story, their lives center around music in some way, whether it's the business or the actual creativeness or just the writing. I think this book would be a really good book for anybody who is graduating or just graduated college. If you haven't already at that point in your life been through some of the things that Freddie is going through or has gone through, you very soon probably will. Whether it be around the idea of experiencing the first major loss of life in your life and how to process that and not knowing what to do with those emotions, or feeling like you aren't where you should be at a certain point of your life, or feeling like you don't know what you want to do with your life, or feeling like you have this expectation on you to be a certain way or do a certain thing or feel a certain way that you just don't. All of that is in this book. There are a lot of heavy, dark topics being covered in this book, but with a very, very light heart. I agree with a lot of the reviews that are already out there for it, that the ending kind of felt like it was a little anticlimactic. It's definitely not how I thought the book was gonna end. I wouldn't say that the ending felt disappointing, because it really didn't. It just didn't feel like an ending. It felt a little open-ended, but not in a way where you're anticipating a sequel necessarily. Honestly, like if I was able to give like half stars and stuff like that, I totally would. I would probably give it a 4.5 stars. The only reason why it lost like the equivalent of half a star roughly was because the ending was just kind of open-ended and not very satisfying, and it was a little unpolished. Like there were definitely typos throughout the book, which is fine because they were very few and far between, and the writing is really good. And the only other thing that contributed to me not giving it a full 5 stars was I don't really fully understand why the book is called Peach. I feel like a number of other titles could have been more appropriate for the novel, but honestly, this is not the first book I've read where the title doesn't seem to really have anything to do with anything notable in the book, so it's not the biggest deal. Ultimately, I give this about a 4.5 star, maybe even like more than that, maybe like a 4.75, because it was just the ending, the polishing that needed to be there, and then for me, the title of not really understanding why it's called Peach, but the cover art is amazing. I have a PDF copy, so I don't get the cover art, but I totally want a physical copy because I love the cover art of this book. Just the whole idea that this guy is starting his journey in Idaho and he's going on this like maze of discovery and he has no idea where he's going, but he's gonna come out the end a different guy kind of thing, and that his going to Idaho is like the whole catalyst for that change. I really love the cover art, and the color of the book is really great. So I can't wait to get my hands onto a physical copy as soon as I have some free spending money. My goal for February is going to be to read 2 books a week and post 2 videos a week in the month of February. Look forward to my TBR video later on this week, and I will definitely see you later. Bye!